Hey everybody, welcome back to another Timer Tip Tuesday. I'm Matt Avery. We'll be doing a quick hits and recent updates session today. We used to do these a little while ago where we would do a monthly review of all of the updates that came in over the past month. We're starting to get back into it. So today's session is going to be just an overview of what we think are some of the more important updates that have recently come out, along with a bunch of random little features that we think are handy or good to know about. Not necessarily really complicated or like super critical, but are nice to haves, things in your back pocket. So as you're using RaceDay scoring or becoming more accustomed to it, I think they're just nice things to know about. So like always, today the session is going to be recorded. We'll post it on our YouTube after the fact, and so don't worry too much if you missed part of it. We also do have Soren on the back end who's going to be helping out if you do have any questions about the features that we're talking about. Today's not going to be a deep dive into these features. It's meant to be a quick and dirty session, so we should be wrapping up fairly quickly. If you do have any questions about the particular features we're covering, feel free to put them in, and Soren will chime in with any of those questions that are relevant. If you have more in-depth questions about a particular setup you have or an issue you're having, best place to handle that is in support. So use a help ticket and send us a note or an email, and we'll get going with you that way. So I think we can go ahead and get started. Let's see how many people are here. Looks like we already got 20 people. So yeah, let's jump right in. Okay, so pretty straightforward today's agenda, just recent updates and quick hits. So let's jump in. So you may have seen this, may have missed it. We do have the ability now on RaceDay scoring to manage RunSignup result sets. So there's a few things you can do with this. Number one, you can manage individual result sets, and if you're doing aggregate scoring, you can manage team result sets. The team result sets were recently added. The team result set management was recently added. So now you can do almost all the things you can do with individual results with team result sets as well. So you can change the order of your result sets. And what this does, it will actually change the order of the result sets as they appear in the dropdown on RunSignup. So that's really nice. I know some people don't like how certain result sets are just going to show at the top because that was the order that the events were added in. Now you can just drag and drop these panels to make them sort in whatever order you want. You can delete result sets only if they are result sets that are not in use by RaceDay scoring. So you'll see the checkbox is grayed out for some of these on the right. That's because that particular result set is actually in use by this setup, so I cannot delete it. And you'd have to go and delete the autosave that is using this result set before you do so. A few other things in here, you can change the name of the result set, the contact info. You can do all sorts of things with result sets that you can do on RunSignup.com. It's just a little bit easier to do it from within RaceDay scoring. Another nice thing is the team result set aspect of this actually has more features than RunSignup backend has. So if you try to manage result sets on RunSignup, the teams are very limited. You can only basically edit the name, and I think that's about it. There's really not much you can do there. So if you do need to do any kind of team management, team result set management, highly suggest you check this out. It's going to be a lot better for you than RunSignup actually. That's that question. Yeah, John, this is done on reports. So if you see the screenshots here, in the report list, you just select result set management, and then you can get right into the result set, individual and team result set management areas. You just flip the tabs back and forth between individual and team result sets at the top. So that's just a nice one we recently added. Another thing that we added that you may have seen is on the participant record, when you click a participant, we now show you a list, like a log, an audit log, effectively, of all of the changes that have been made to this participant recently, and where the change came from, what the old value was, and what the new value is. So here you can see at the top, it's a log. It says that, hey, the registration event changed from 5K run to 10K. and it was changed at this time by the participant view. That means that in RaceDay scoring, someone came in and changed the dropdown from 5K run to 10K. So this is a nice way for you to see the source of changes that have happened and a history of those changes. If you're using things like data check reports or data actions, it'll actually show which data action or data check report made that change as well. So if you've ever had to track down how something got changed and you saw here that the source was a data check or a data action, that might point you in the right direction as to if there was something wrong with the data check or data action, or if you just need to figure out the timeline of what happened to someone, you can use this to do so. So notice that there's a lot of ones that say RSU API. Basically what that means is that the change happened at RunSignup. We don't know exactly the source of that change. We just know that somehow on RunSignup it changed and we saw that change and imported it in. So for example, we would have no way of differentiating a change to a bib that was done via the check-in app versus via RunSignup dashboard, because all that happens is it changes in RunSignup and then we see it in RaceDay scoring. RaceDay check-in doesn't talk directly to us, so we don't know that the check-in made this happen. So if you see RSU API, that's basically saying it could have been on the dashboard at RunSignup, it could have been imported into RunSignup, it could have been changed with some other third-party application that uses the RunSignup API. So it's a bit more generic than specifically just RunSignup dashboard. So just a nice little feature that is good to know about if you ever have to look into the history of someone. Next, data check improvements. So if you don't know what data checks are, I definitely would recommend trying them out, playing around with them sometime. Basically, they're a way to generate a report that's based on some conditions, like anybody who has a time greater than or less than 13 minutes, the 5K or something, and say you want to disqualify anyone who has that time met those conditions. So it's just a nice way to run a quick report and make changes based on that report. We've added a few things recently that help you out make nice little data check reports. One of them is this chip difference field. Chip difference is effectively the difference in time between the person's assigned start time and when their chip actually was read at the start. So this will always be a positive number. So basically, even if they started 5 minutes before the gun or 5 minutes after the gun, it's going to be 5 minutes, not -5 or +5. So in the next update, we are going to be adding a before or after assigned start field, which will just be basically a field that'll report whether they started before or after their assigned start. So using those two together could give you a nice package to basically generate a report that tells you, hey, show me everyone who started at least or more than 5 minutes before their start, or 10 minutes after their start, or just 10 minutes before or after their start. So what you can do is generate these data check reports and really keep track of your data and make any changes that you find necessary. So additionally, what we added recently to data checks was the ability to do raw read filtering on data check reports. Before this change, the way data check reports worked were it could only really operate on scored data. So data that was actually used in a segment, like a time that was used in a segment. So you could not use something like, hey, this person was, seen at a chip check or a swim entry checkpoint or a announcer line that's not used for scoring purposes to do something else. So what you can do now is you can actually say, hey, I'm going to add a raw read filter, which will allow me to see all of the data about this person, not just the data that we actually used for timing and scoring purposes to put them into this report. So if you use a raw read filter in the data check report, what it will do is it will allow you to say, hey, I saw this person, they're registered in the 5K, and the system saw them on a half marathon location, for instance. If they were seen at a half marathon location, I want to maybe flip them to the half marathon. So it's really neat that you can do this with data checks. You have to be careful, just like data actions, because these are totally open-ended. What that means is like, hey, if they were seen at all at this location, they're going to show up in the report. So even if, let's say they showed up and they were out on course and they got red after the race was over, or they, were seen before the race, or something like that. So just, take that into consideration. But it is pretty cool. You could have, for an example, a data check report that finds all the participants with a raw read seen between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. at your swim entrance that are not in the 6:30 corral, and then you decide whether or not you'd like to switch them over to that corral. So this is something that you can play around with. If you have free time, I think it's really neat to set these up for more complicated events or events where you have event transfers happening on course based on data. Okay, this is just a really nice little thing we added recently. If you ever found yourself needing to quickly change the timing location filters, you can do that more easily now by just clicking the link on the reads by location panel. So it'll show you the time of day for all your filters here, and you can just click it and it'll bring you right to the setting where you can update that time. Additionally, I didn't note it here, but we also now show any additional filters in this reads by location area. So it used to be the case that if you had additional filters, like if you said, hey, I've got a start location, it's considering start reads until 9 a.m., but I also want to say, don't consider start reads until 8 a.m., and you really want a narrow window, those additional filters would not show up here on the dashboard. They actually will now, and you'll see the full picture of your timing filters now. Okay, this is a nice one we recently added. If you ever found yourself not knowing what to do when you were swapping bibs, so we had this bib swap function for a long time in participants' actions. It's in a little drop down, but many timers, they just go right to the participant who has the problem, and they just go to the bib number and they want to change it, which is totally reasonable. That makes sense to me as a user. So what we did was we track, basically we've had this pop-up that will show, it says, hey, this bib number that you're switching to is already in use by someone else. And then we let you proceed anyways or cancel out. So we said, well, if someone is switching a bib 3001 to 3002, let's say, and they just meant to swap it, why don't we just give them the function right here? So now if you change a bib to someone else's bib that's already being used, the system will say, hey, do you want to swap instead? And you'll enter into the swap participants function here, and it will just allow you to quickly swap between the two bibs as if you went to the participants actions dropdown and select bib swap itself. So just a nice little shortcut. If you are doing this, you'll now have that option to just swap bibs right here. Okay. Next, this is for cross-country timers out there. We have updated mile split for 2024. They've changed their requirements quite a bit and their process quite a bit. So we have a full guide on exactly how this all works, but we've done a few things. We've updated our participant import function to work on their default CSV participant export, with a few slight tweaks if you have multiple team types. It's all explained in this guide, so I'm not going to go into full details on it. Just know that if you need to do mile split submissions for your cross-country races, there's a guide right here. Feel free to reach out if you have more questions on it. Just know we did update for 2024 in case you have coaches ask or you have mile split ask. A really, really huge one, if you haven't heard already, we've been promoting it quite a bit, but we do now have RaceJoy timing integration available. So this is for anyone using RaceDay scoring who wants to offer real-time notifications to RaceJoy users, even if they aren't using their phone or carrying their phone on course. So basically, it's going to allow you to send chip data to RaceJoy so that those spectators who are tracking RaceJoy users can get notified based on the actual chip data instead of their GPS data. So we have a whole lot of plans in the future on making this better, generating estimated position on the map for chip timed users, making the map builder and monitoring available from within RaceDay scoring. Those are some ideas we have, and we have a whole lot more planned. But just know that this is available. If you wanted to learn more about it, we have a series of videos and guides on how to set this up. There's a lot of info out there. Kevin does a great job, better than I can, of explaining it to you in these nice short videos here. So definitely check this out if you're interested in learning more. We think it's definitely the future for RaceJoy and RaceDay scoring, and trying to make this product more real-time and accessible to everyone, not just those who are carrying their phones for GPS data. Was there a question on that one that should be brought up?
No, it was the Miles Billet question.
Cool. Okay, next. If you're using the announcer kiosk window, the RaceDay Hub announcer kiosk window, we've added a way to show unknown reads in it now. So this is pretty straightforward. It's just been a feature that a few have asked for. So if you're curious about this, it's right in the setup screen when you start the kiosk to show unknown reads, and it'll show up as unknowns right there. So, this is great if you are using it and, you want to make sure you call out those unknown bib numbers at the finish line. Your announcer can say, hey, 35 was unknown, and your team can go grab them, get their info, and type it in. So just a nice to have. If you're doing announcer anyway, you might as well show unknowns. So. Okay, now we're going to jump into some quick hits. Again, these are just kind of little features that I think are nice or things you should consider while setting up testing. So let's jump right in. Number one, it's a cross-country season. So if you're doing team rosters, this is a very, very, very helpful feature that is not very well known, I think. If you're doing the team rosters report, and again, you build a team rosters report by building a report, selecting all scored events or the scored event that you want to print, and then selecting team rosters. This will create a report with all of the participants in the team. And what you can do is you can go to Actions, Print Preview, and select Page Break after sections. What this does is it will automatically advance to the next page when another section shows up. So each team will have their own page. Which is what you want when you're printing out packets to stuff for cross-country events. So just if you're searching for this, this is how to do it. You got to go into Print Preview and select Yes, Page Break after sections. This was one that just comes up every once in a while, and it's a lot of people get caught on it. They are setting up an event, they created it, they're maybe new to the system, and they don't know how to update the let's say, the name of an event, or they need to add another event or something else. So if you have a local race, basically an on-run sign-up race, you can always edit the race after you've created it right under the sync settings area. So click that, click edit race, and then you're bumped right back into that little wizard where you built out the race originally. So you can add more registration events, you can make changes to them. Additionally, this is where you would go if you wanted to publish a race to RunSignup that you had already set up. So if you built a race locally and you forgot to check that box to push it to RunSignup, you just come in here, check the box, fill out the extra fields you need, and you can do that. There's all sorts of other things you can do here. You can mark super and sub events, which are a way to basically put runners from one event to another event. You can change names, distance, whatever you want. So this is just a good to know. Okay, this is one that we added a little while ago, but I think is a great feature more people should know about: the min finish time and max chip start time offset fields. These are super helpful, especially if you have a shared start and finish area for multiple events. They're basically a way for you to say that your gap factor, the minimum time between reads for start and finish times, can be set on the event level without having to have separate timing locations for each event. So basically, you would set the timing location, time filters, and gap factors in order to capture the all of the data. So basically, if you have a crossover of start and finish times, just make sure that the very, very last start of the very latest event would be captured by your collect start times until time, and the very first time of the very first event for finish would be captured under your consider finish times starting at time. And then just make sure that your gap factor is basically the shortest time possible for any event using it. So you have a very wide filter set on your timing locations, and you can narrow it down on your scored events. So you can say for your 5K, I want to say 12 minutes. For the 10K, 29 minutes. And even though your gap factor was 12, if the scored event filter says 29 minutes and the person was in the 10K, it'll catch it and say, no, this person, the scored event filter was too, the minimum time for the finish was too short. And then the chip start filter is basically saying, hey, I know I said that I would consider chip starts until this really, really late time in order to make sure that I could capture all of my start times for all of my events. But in the 5K, I really want to make sure that no one is accepted after 2 minutes after the gun start time. So if I have 7:46 p.m., I want to make sure that no one after 7:48 p.m. for this particular event is considered. So it'll throw out any reads that are after 2 minutes after the event start or corral start, if it's a corral person. So they're just really nice features to help you with your filtering for specifically these events where they share a common course and the distances are all over the place or the start times are all over the place. So I really like these features. Definitely recommend checking them out. Okay, you guys all can hear me still? Might just be you, Duncan?
Your audio is good. Yeah, Duncan, it must be something on your end because we're getting clear audio.
Okay, good. I have had issues with my Wi-Fi recently, so yeah, let me know. All right, next, adding net or clock times. So a lot of people don't like how in RaceDay scoring, when you add raw reads, you have to add it in time of day. I know what that's like. You don't want to think about like, oh, well, they would have finished at 9:58 if they had finished in the time of 32 minutes in the 10K or whatever. So you can actually add times in clock time or net time. It's possible. It's just a little bit more difficult. So basically what you can do is you can go into scored reads, click add times. There's a button at the top that says enter clock times. When you do this, you can select the event start time that you want to base your net time on. So if it's in 5K, you just click 5K. And then you'd be able to enter in 19 minutes and 30 seconds instead of entering in the raw read actual time of day. The system effectively does the math for you and inserts a raw read at that time of day. So it's just a nice little feature if you're used to doing things in net time, or you just don't want to try and do the math on your own to figure out the time of day of when they would have finished. If you just know that they said their Garmin says they ran a 19:30 and you want to honor that. So on a similar note, if you want to just adjust someone quickly, we have an adjustments panel in RaceDay scoring. If you click into a participant on the scoring tab, you'll see this adjustments feature. This is a way to just slightly adjust a person's time. So if they have a finish time already, it wasn't a totally misread, but you need to adjust it for whatever reason, you can do so here. You can enter a negative time. So if you need to, subtract time off of their finish, you can do that here by you literally type in the minus sign in the hours, just before the hour field, and it will be a negative adjustment. If you don't do that, it's going to add time to them. So basically, it's a way to just slightly adjust negative or positive one person's time. You can also import these. There's ways to do that if you want to do it en masse, but it's just good to know if you need to quickly adjust someone, click their name, make an adjustment right here. Next, there's other things in this adjustment panel that I think are pretty handy. There's this allow pre-gun reads feature, which is nice if you have a few early starters and you're doing a chip start race and you want to let their early chip start go through so that their chip times will be accurate for them. So you can do that here. It'll just basically override that default functionality in RaceDay scoring where it will always ignore all of the chip start times before the gun. This is a setting that is available on the scored event as well. So maybe it's the case that you want to say, hey, for everybody in this event, I want to allow pre-gun times. You can do that on the scored events area, as well as on the individual area. I just know I see this a good amount where people say, hey, how do I just allow this person to go through? They went out early. I don't want to set up, I don't want to allow pre-gun times for everyone. Just go into the record and make a one-off change here.
Hey, Matt, can you just clarify on how clock times work with wave offset?
Clock times work with wave offset. Do you mean like if you have a corral start time for someone?
Yeah, just prioritization there.
Yeah, so basically the way it works, if a person is in an event, they get the event's clock start time, and everything is based on that. If they happen to be part of a corral that also has a start time, that takes priority over the event start time. So if, let's say, I was registered for the 10K, scheduled to go off at 10 a.m., but I was in a corral that was an early start corral, then I could, my gun time would actually be the corral start time instead of my event start time. And then this setting would apply to my personal gun time, which would be my corral start time in this case, because I was assigned to a corral that had a start time. So all that is done based on that priority, basically. It's event, if you're in a corral, that takes priority. And then if it's a chip time, then the chip always takes priority if it's valid. And then if you are showing chip time and you didn't get a chip read at the start, or the chip read at the start was before the assigned start and you didn't have this on, it would show as the gun time of the corral or the event, depending. So basically, it'll waterfall down. If you missed your chip start and you're in a corral, it will use the corral gun time as your chip start time. All right, moving on. Just a quick feature, if you're building out complicated races, you can use this duplicate reports function as a way to more easily build out similar reports. Many times you have a bunch of very similar kind of report sections that you're going to build. Maybe you have a gender filter showing 10 people, and you need to just quickly duplicate them. This is a nice way to do it. Just click duplicate and then go into the filters and make the adjustments that you need to this one section on the fly. So we saw this recently come in on support, and it's just a nice reminder that you can use this as a way to quickly build out those report sections with custom filters without having to add a new section and then editing the filter, completely adding it back in. Especially if you have a lot of filters stacked into it, it might be easier just to duplicate a report section and go from there. So just good to know that that feature exists. Next. Data entry keyboard shortcuts. This is a thing that many people don't know about. We do have keyboard shortcuts when you're doing data entry. I know what it's like to have to do a lot of data entry. So we did add these pretty early on in the software. So if you click this key shortcuts button, it'll just show you what they are. But basically, Alt-S is the most commonly used one. Alt-Q will toggle quick mode on and off. Alt-D will delete a participant. Alt-right and left go back and forth between records. So I know when I was doing data entry, we used to have to do it a lot more back in the day. With online registration as good as it is now, it's not as common, but for many events, you still have a stack of papers to enter. So Alt-S, Alt-S, Alt-S as your friend. Additionally, there's a settings area here with all sorts of customizations that you can apply to data entry. What fields will show, the ability to set field defaults like town name or zip code if it's a small town event where you want everyone in the same event. It's pretty handy. Okay, next is a fairly recent feature to allow you to remove events from sync. This is just a quick feature that allows you to say, hey, these handful of events I don't care about. I don't want to see them cluttering up my interface anymore. I don't want to see these participants in scoring ever because I'm not going to do anything with them. You can just come into events to sync here and remove them. So in this case, I got a triathlon and the kids, they aren't timed. So I'm just going to remove them from scoring. And you'll no longer see those events in the drop downs. You'll no longer see those participants in race day scoring. And if you make it, you decide at a later date that you want to include them again, you can just go back in and add them again. Really easy. Just makes things a little bit more clean for you. Okay, so finally, moving on to some testing features. I always like to recommend that people test things out in advance of the race. And this is what I'll do when you send in your complicated questions asking if the setup's going to work. I'll just go ahead and test it in the back end for you, and I highly suggest you do the same. So if you need to test things out and you don't got your bibs assigned yet, it's a week out from the race or something, just go in, disable sync, and save sync settings, and then add some fake bib assignments to people, see what happens when you add raw reads for them. And then once you're done with your testing, just come into the sync queue. You'll see all of the pending changes that were done while you were testing to participant data, and you can just delete them one by one here. So if you added a couple of bib assignments, they'd show here. If you changed some events, they'd show here. Just delete them out, and then you can go ahead and resume sync again. So yeah, it's really helpful to test things out. I understand you don't have bibs assigned yet. It's a little bit difficult, but it's not that hard to get around. Just disable sync, add some fake bibs, add some fake times, confirm it looks good, remove the reads, remove the bib assignments, delete the pending queue, and you're good to go. Next, highly, highly recommend doing this. If you're building out reports with a lot of filters, especially, or you want to make sure that your top finisher categories are working properly, that you got the right people in the right categories, preview reports. Come into your reports that you have built out, select all these, show non-finishers, show non-starters, include participants without a bib number, just show everybody in this report as if they had times. This will be a great way to test out your report filtering, even without having to add times for someone. So if you don't want to go through the headache of manually adding raw reads or whatever, you can come in here and just say, hey, I want to preview and show this. And let's say you're doing a triathlon where you got Clydesdale and Athena based on custom questions, and you just want to confirm that the right people are going to show up in this report. Add your custom question, Clydesdale Athena category question to the column list at the top, show non-starters, show non-finishers, and it'll show you who will be in there. I'll just show them in alphabetical order, but hey, you'll get a good idea of whether or not your reports are working well in advance of race day, which, as you know, it's a real headache to troubleshoot in the heat of the moment. So definitely try this out. Highly suggest it if you're doing any kind of complicated reporting, just previewing things, making sure they look good. Just make sure to uncheck these before you actually go to the race. And be aware, the show non-finishers setting, that's on by default for any events that have multiple segments, because that's the way that we show progress. If you're doing a triathlon, they want to see where they are on course as they're actually completing the race. So if you're testing this for a triathlon, make sure to leave show non-finishers enabled, checked. I think that's all I had to go through today. Nice and quick, about 30 minutes is right on spot. Any questions that wanted to bring up for the group?
Just real quick, how would you recommend testing a race that's in the future? I had a question about from Eva, if you would need to change the time of the race to test them.
No, what I would do is well, there's many different ways you can do testing, I guess. The question is like, what I would probably do is don't even change the date of the race. Just set your streams if you're actually running reads. It depends on how you're testing, I guess. If you're actually running reads across your reader, what I would probably do is go to the stream and set the date override to whatever the actual race date is. There's a button to set to the race default date. So I would just do that. And then all the reads would come in as if they happened on the race date. Or if you're testing, let's say, manually adding reads, what you can do is just load up scoring here. If you can use this generate test reads function here. And so you can basically say, I want to generate reads for bibs 1 to 100 at this location. And this will generate reads based on the day of the event. So you don't need to change the day of the event here. You can just leave it as is, and it'll work just fine. So if I did this, it'll add reads between this time and that time for these bibs, 1 per bib. on the actual day of the race. So you don't need to worry about changing the event days at all. There's no way to like save the state of the dashboard right now, Jeff. It's definitely something that we want to do eventually, is make it more like you could apply customizations to the dashboard where you say, hey, I want this thing pinned here, or this one always open. Definitely things that we want to get to. Any other questions from anyone before we sign off for today? All right, well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk to you at the next Timer Tip Tuesday. See you later.